down. Okay, we call that cauda equina. Is that clear, folks? Those are cauda equina, folks, that hangs it. Okay, that's important. Now, what do we need to know here? The needle insertion, right? In spinal cord, there are two types of needle is placed. One is epidural anesthesia in pregnant people or surgery. The next one is lumbar puncture. Two different procedures. Okay. Now, whether it's epidural or lumbar puncture, usually they go below L3, folks. Okay. Why do they go below L3? If they were to go above L3, when they put a needle, it will poke the spinal cord. Is that clear, folks? But if you go below L3, the needle will only touch the cauda. As the needle touch cauda, cauda can move around, but the spinal cord won't move around. There's no space. Are we clear, folks? So that's why they say, look at this. This is something that you need to be extremely careful. This is where the spinal cord is ending. So the ending portion of the spinal cord called conus medullaris. That's a bottom end. And then you have cauda equina. People don't know this. And when we talk about conus medullaris syndrome and cauda equina syndrome, they were like, where and why? You see, conus medullaris syndrome means that happened at the bottom of the spinal cord. If I tell cauda equina syndrome, that means all this cauda equina is involved. Is everybody clear, folks? So you should know the anatomy between conus medullaris and cauda equina. All clear? Okay. So that is just the name for the ending part. Okay. Now, let's see about the needle. It's okay. When the needle goes, it has to go through the skin. After that fascia of fat, we call that subcutaneous layer. Then it goes through supraspinous ligament. Then there's an interspinous ligament. Interspinous means, simple, folks, in between spine, you have a ligament. That's what called interspinous ligament. Then it finally entered through ligamentum flavum. The ligamentum flavum is something important or famous in anatomy, folks. Okay, nobody knows why, but it's very special. Why we call it ligamentum flavum? It looks so yellow in color. In Latin, yellow means flavi, isn't it, folks? That's why I call the yellow fever caused by yellow virus also flavivirus, isn't it? So this is ligamentum flavum, okay? Now, after ligamentum flavum, the needle is in your epidural space. Epidura, above the dura. I will talk about the layers so you will learn. So that epidural needle will stop here. It won't go after this. Epidural is the one that gives anesthesia. That stops here, folks. Okay. So when people get epidural, the needle stops here. Is everybody clear? All right. And then, but if I don't do epidural, let's say I'm doing lumbar puncture. You guys know why do we do lumbar puncture? Epidural is for anesthesia. Lumbar puncture is done for two reasons. Okay. One is to measure opening pressure, especially if you have intracranial hypertension, we could measure. Second reason we do lumbar puncture is for cell analysis, like a culture, look for WBC, all these different things. That's cell analysis. Is that clear, folks? So when do you do cell analysis? When you suspect meningitis. When you suspect meningitis, you do cell analysis, okay? You will learn more in step 2 CK, but you should know at least lumbar puncture is done for two reasons. Is everybody clear, folks? Okay. Who does the lumbar puncture? Which specialty doctor do that? It's anesthesiologist. When you order a lumbar puncture, you can't just order lumbar puncture. If you just order it, it will come back to you right away in the hospital. You have to put what you are looking for. So when we order a lumbar puncture, we will say lumbar puncture OP. So that means they know that I want the opening pressure to be measured, so they will pay attention to it. Is that clear, folks? So you have to be specific when you order it. Yeah. All right. So if I am doing a lumbar puncture on a patient, the needle will continue to go because the lumbar puncture is to get into the CSF. CSF is in the subarachnoid space. So the needle has to keep going. So the needle has to go through dura mater, arachnoid mater, and then you are in the subarachnoid space. Okay, the needle has to stop here. What is after this? Pia mater. I'm just writing here. Your needle should not touch the pia mater. If it touches the pia mater, it's equal to touching the spinal cord or brain. Is that clear, folks? All right. Now this is where lumbar puncture stops, and this is where epidural stops. Is everybody clear, folks? So if I show you both needle, can you tell which needle for which one? Why is it hard to answer? Epidural needle is smaller than lumbar puncture. Is that clear, folks? Epidural is very tiny. It's like this much because it only goes halfway. When you see a lumbar puncture, that shit is bigger than this pen. It freaks me out every time I see that needle. It is a long needle it has to go through. And anesthesiologists do that. Sometimes they train the residents. What does that mean? They poke, it's not in the right place. It comes out and it goes again. I mean, you can't get mad because they have to get trained, right? So don't get mad if you go to hospital if the patient says no to you. You get mad, right? When we want to do a physical exam, patient says no. How do we learn? So we have to go for it. So sometime they will train. I allow students to do anything on me. I don't care except lumbar puncture. That thing hurts. That is really painful if they miss it. Because there are situations I've seen, they have to poke like 3 times or 4 times to get in it. Oof, that hurts, okay? Because sometimes why anesthesiologists go wrong, the angle of the needle is different. Sometimes it will go and hit the bone. When the needle hit the bone, that's like your life goes to hell and come back in that 1 second. That's how it feels. Even the hand, you know, sometimes nurses put a flu shots and they are not careful. It goes and hit the humerus bone. Have it ever happened to you guys? Oh, that thing hurts when it touches the bone because bone has free nerve endings, right? So that's, all right. These layers need to be memorized. They could ask you in any order, so you need to know the right order. Any questions so far? All right, so that creates the understanding of outside, how to get into spinal cord. Next, we go to the cross-section or histology of the spinal cord. Histology of the spinal cord, folks. Now, if you see in this picture, I'm looking at it. The minute I see, I know this is anterior surface and this is the posterior surface. How do I know that? You see inside there's a letter H. You see that? In that letter H, the backside looks very thin, but in the front it looks thicker, isn't it, folks? The thicker part is always considered anterior horn. The thin part is always considered posterior horn. That's how you identify, folks, okay? So that's how you identify. So we have posterior horn and anterior horn. So let's talk about it a little bit. Now, this is called white matter of the spinal cord. This is called gray matter of the spinal cord. So how do I put this in a sentence? In spinal cord, gray matter is in the middle, white matter is outside peripheral. Clear, folks? This is opposite in the brain. In the brain, gray matter is outside, white matter is inside. Okay, there's no clinical, you just have to know. Okay. Just to understand, why do we call this is a white matter? This is the understanding, folks. When you take a neurons, so this is a neurons. This is a neurons. What is this called? The signal that goes out. There's a name for this and there's a name for this. One is dendrites and the other one is axons, isn't it, folks? So if this is axon, you have a myelin sheet that connects that nerve. Is everybody clear, folks? So you have a myelin sheet that protects this. Because why? This is a cell body that everything is happening there, but the message is transferred to another cell, let's say another cell, through that. It's like this. Is everybody clear, folks? So the signal is going through this cable, so the cable is protected by myelin. Is everybody clear, folks? That myelin is lipid, fat. Can you stain a fat? You cannot stain a fat. That's why it looks white color. We call it white matter. Okay. All of them are white matter, so they cannot stain. That's all. So these are cell body and these are exons carrying. So you could tell all the white matter cannot make their own decision. All they do transmit the information. Is that clear, folks? Decision making happens in the gray matter. Are we clear? All right. Now, what's the function of posterior horn? Posterior horn is what I call the receptionist. Okay, so don't write anything down. Watch me explaining, folks. Okay. Now, what did we say in my drawing the other day? When you have a complaint of sensory, we send it to spinal cord, isn't it, folks? So that means you are sending a complaint about something in a company. So when that complaint goes to the company, the first person you will meet is the posterior horn, which is the receptionist, where they receive your complaint. Is that clear, folks? So we could tell posterior horn is a sensory receiver. It's a sensory receiver, right? Like, think about it. If you wanted to complain about me, when you come to Delphi, you will see the receptionist. And then you tell, I'm here to complain this one. So what receptionist does, they will listen to you as which department you are complaining about, because we have different departments. Is that clear, folks? After they listen to you, they will guide you where to go, which floor to go correctly, or which department to go. Does that make sense, folks? So from the posterior horn, I'm just going to make some location. Okay, so this is one department. This is another department. There's another department. There's a different department. Okay, we will come to that. So once they talk to you, they will say, okay, go here, go here. There's a department here. There's a department here, everywhere. So they will guide you to go where it needs to be gone. And once you go to that exact department, that's where your final complaint is received in the spinal cord. Is that clear, folks? From this exact department, your track will start going up. Is everybody clear? From here, the track starts. All these departments is where your track will start to go up to the brain. Is everybody clear, folks? So now, if you see, I don't like this picture, that's confusing. So let's take a new picture here. Okay, so I'm just drawing to understanding. Let's assume this is the spinal cord. Okay, I'm going to say that's a posterior. This is anterior. Again, don't draw it now. I'll give you time. If you don't focus, neurology is lost. Okay, so keep it. I'll give you time enough to write. Okay, now this is what the posterior horn, and this is the anterior horn. Okay, now let's talk about this. So we said posterior horn is the receptionist that who receives the information, isn't it, folks? We need to know, how did they even get in? So here is the intervertebral foramina. Is everybody clear, folks? That's your intervertebral foramina, and the nerve is coming inside, okay? The nerve is coming inside. The minute the nerve, so if I were to ask you to pull my median nerve in my hand, you could actually pull the median nerve, but in that median nerve, you cannot tell which one is sensory fiber, which one is motor, because they all mix together. Is that clear, folks? It's like your computer charger. If you see one wire, but inside there's actually two different, right? You cannot tell which one is which one. Same thing. But the minute this nerve enter the intervertebral foramina, they divide it into two. One goes to the back, one goes to the front. Is everybody clear, folks? The one that goes to the back is sensory. The one that goes to the front is motor. Okay. Now we're going to take a look at this picture one more time.
When you say it goes back, do you mean toward the posterior horn and anterior horn, or do you?
So yeah, this will go back to the posterior horn. I'm not done yet. I just want to show you a picture. Let me show you. Then once I show you, this will create a better understanding. Just saw it here. All right, here you go.